Hello everybody and welcome back to DC Central, and in today's video we'll be breaking down and reviewing The Flash Season 6 Episode 17, otherwise entitled Liberation, and if you have not seen this episode make sure you go and do so before proceeding with this review, as it will be filled with spoilers. So, 617, we are not far off the end now. Of course, we did learn recently that episode 19 of this season, otherwise entitled Success is Assured, is going to be the season finale for Season 6. Of course, it is a bit of an impromptu ending, but of course, there's not a lot we can do about that. So, we've only got a couple of episodes left, and this back half of the season, I mean, really, Season 6 as a whole has been fantastic, but this back half of the season has just been banger after banger in regards to episodes. It's just been top-tier Flash content, really, and I've been really enjoying myself in this back half of the season. If you've been listening to my reviews, you'll know, I've been extremely positive on this season of The Flash, and particularly this back half. It's just been so strong, and this episode continues that trend. While I do feel like this episode has got a few issues, which I will talk about, particularly to do with the writing, I do think that this episode was still a fantastic one, and again, a lot went down here. So the opening of this episode is really bizarre. It just starts, it just opens straight away with no real intro or anything like that. It just kind of kicks off and we see Barry, Ralph and Cisco in the speed lab trying to make the, artificial, they have this machine that was going to create the artificial speed force. And again, it's just really weird how it starts because there's no build up to this, especially because we know that Cisco has kind of been working on this, but we haven't really seen it. We saw in the last episode, he was like, oh yeah, I need to run some tests, but I don't need to be there for it, so I can go help Ralph out, so that was fine. But we haven't really seen Cisco working on this really. So we just kind of kick off this episode, we walk into the speed lab and we just see this massive machine that's just been built all of a sudden with Barry, Ralph and Cisco working on it. So they're trying to create this artificial speed force with this machine and also with the help of Nora's notebook, but unfortunately it doesn't work and they're all kind of stressed out because they think, well, how can Thorne do this on his own without any guidance or anything like that? How come we can't do it? So that doesn't work. So again, this opening scene, again, it's just there to kind of set up more for the Speed Force. We don't know if this will actually go anywhere again because, again, so much of this season, these last few episodes that we're not going to get anymore, obviously were cut, so this might not actually go anywhere, but this scene just by itself, again, was really weird in how it just opened because it just kicked off, and again, there hasn't really been much to set this up in regards to Cisco building this machine. It was just sort of there, so again, I found that a bit strange as an opening. However, the main sort of crux of this episode is we have Barry investigating Iris, or the Mirror Iris. Of course, he did kind of suspect by the end of the last episode that this was not his wife, and he's investigating her. He's doing all of these, he's actually doing some investigative work, which was nice to see. He's kind of just decked out all of Cecile's house, just kind of just dedicated to this investigation, and he basically puts the pieces together that this version of Iris is not his, and it could be some kind of shapeshifter of some description. He doesn't quite know what it is. I do quite like how he went through all these different altercations about how this Iris could be and how, he was ruling them all out. Particularly, it kind of influences more the fact that obviously this is all on one Earth now, because he does mention John, he's talking about, oh yeah, this could be a Martian who's now on the Earth, but John would have sensed it and he would have told us. So I like the fact they can just reference John Jones now. I think that's really cool, because again, it just kind of, so those little comic booky things that just kind of get you excited, and now they're all on the same Earth. So that was cool. But I do like the fact how he did do his own investigation work to really nail down what this Iris actually is, or who she is, and that was cool. And then this does kind of eventually lead to the situation where Iris has to go to Star Labs to basically face up to the accusations, and we have this really interesting twist where Barry finds the photo that Camilla took before she got sent into the mirror dimension, that she took of Wally and Iris, and we can see in that photo that Iris is basically all in her kind of mirror-looking, I don't know how you quite describe it, but her mirror-looking form, I guess you could say. And Barry has that photograph, and he also has the the prismatic refractor, I believe it was called. Basically the device that could scan you to tell you whether you're from this dimension or not. And he tries to use it on Mirror Iris and it does absolutely nothing. And then they use it on Barry and he comes up as a mirror reflection. So there's kind of a twist there. And we actually see that what Eva did was she basically flipped the prismatic refractor. So she basically flipped it so it could turn into the mirror opposite of itself, which obviously is kind of like a cool play on how we've seen the mirror opposite of people. This was like a mirror opposite of this object. At least that's how I interpreted it. So it could basically flip on Barry. So that was kind of interesting because I didn't expect that twist, because to be fair, when this happened, when Iris didn't get scanned but Barry did, I was thinking in my head, I was like, okay, how have they done this? I was trying to figure out in my head, how has this worked out? Because Iris has kind of just, there's no way this is Iris is doing necessarily, because she couldn't have really done anything in that time. So I was like, is this Eva in another form, or like what's going on here? But it was the prismatic refractor being basically flipped on itself, which I thought was a really interesting thing. And we do see in like the little glimpse of how Eva did it, which I think was quite interesting, because again, I was genuinely thrown for a loop by this twist. I was like, how's this happened? And it was kind of like a cool little few minutes in my head where I was sat there trying to figure it all out. So that was really cool, and I did enjoy this whole storyline of Barry investigating Iris. Now, Iris's mission in this episode is to basically team up with Camilla and Captain Singh. We do have Singh in this episode as well, his mirror version. And one thing I do want to bring up here, again, I was talking about in the beginning how I think there's some issues with the writing. In this episode, for some reason, out of nowhere, these mirror people, like the mirror Iris and Camilla and Singh, they start referring to themselves as brother and sister, and then they start referring to Eva as mother. I don't know where this has come from. Like, this has not been established beforehand, and this isn't even like a thing where it's like, oh, well, there's more than one now, because we've had Mirror Camilla for a while. I mean, yes, Singh's new, but, you know, especially even from the very beginning of this back half, we've had Iris and Eva. So why has Iris never referred to Eva as mother before, and why has Iris never referred to Camilla as sister before? It's just like a weird thing. They just started calling each other stuff like as like a family, and I was like, where's this come from? Like, again, it's a nitpicky thing. Like, it's not anything huge. It doesn't disrupt the episode or anything like that. It was just weird because it just comes out of nowhere, and it's kind of a cool idea, the fact they kind of refer to themselves as a family. But I just found it strange because it just comes out of nowhere. It's never been planted before. We've never heard this before. It just starts happening, and I was like, okay, interesting choice. But whatever. But anyway, their mission is to basically go into Iron Heights and speak to Bloodwork. We actually see Bloodwork return. I did not expect this. So we have, Sandhill Ramamurthy return as Bloodwork, and this was really cool. They basically need a bit of his blood so they can get Eva out of the mirror dimension. And they make a deal with him saying, okay, you give us a bit of our blood, we'll set you free. So Camilla, the mirror Camilla, actually walks into the prison cell to get him out, and actually ends up killing herself in the process. Like, Iris says, you'll die if you do that, and Camilla's like, well, it's all part of the plan. So Camilla walks in, and this mirror Camilla is now dead. She just walks straight in and frees Ramsey. And this was interesting, as I'm kind of confused. Like, is Camilla dead now? Because obviously, if the mirror Camilla is now dead, which she is, does that mean that the Camilla in the real world is dead? I'm going to say no, given the fact that, I'll get to this bit later, but obviously Mirror Iris dies in this episode, and the other Iris inside the mirror dimension is still alive. But I guess that means... But that could be different, because given the fact that Mirror Iris was in the real world... But actually, yeah, so that would still work. So I don't know. I'm guessing Camilla's not dead, but the Mirror Camilla dies, so there that is. And Iris is able to get a bit of Ramsey's blood, and then Ramsey actually goes back into his cell. He's like, yeah, I could come out with you, but at the end of the day, I'm going to play my own game. I'm going to play the long game, he says. So that basically is setting up that Ramsey will return again at some point, whether it be this season or whether it be next season. Of course, he could have showed up in the rest of this season, but again, that was cut short, so that might not happen. Or he may just show up in a future season, we don't quite know. But there's more to play with Ramsey, definitely, which I'm definitely happy about, because I loved Bloodwork in the first half of the season. He was a fantastic villain, and I was really excited to see him return in this episode, so that was really cool. And this whole mission with Iris, I really enjoyed these scenes. Now, eventually, Barry goes after Iris after Cecile sets him free, and we have this really awesome fight scene between Barry and Iris. Like, they actually fight each other. Like, Iris gets, like, these mirror kind of swords as arms, and she starts fighting Barry. It was a really cool fight scene, actually. Really interesting, because what happens earlier on in the episode is we have Camilla and Singh placing these mirrors all around Iris's apartment. So, basically, in this fight, she could just stab in different directions and just get Barry from all these different mirrors around the room. And it just creates this really cool fight. Because I must say, like, when Singh and Camilla were placing these mirrors all around the room, I was like, that's weird. And it is a bit contrived how it's done. It's almost like they were planning this fight scene, which I don't know if they could have necessarily planned that. I don't know if Iris could have necessarily known that Barry was going to show up at the flat and fight her there. Like, I don't know how they came up with that, but whatever. Again, that's like another one of my writing issues. I don't quite understand where that came from, but whatever. I think it's interesting that this fight scene comes together as it does, because again, it just looks really cool visually. It's really interesting. But it eventually ends with Iris being killed. Like, Iris does eventually overwhelm Barry by just dropping a mirror on his head essentially, and she is on top of him, and it's quite a strange scene actually leading up to her death. It's kind of sexy. It's kind of weird how Mirror Iris plays this, but whatever. Eventually, Eva kind of comes through, and she's able to gain control of Iris and kills her. So we do see the death of Mirror Iris, and this is where my other issue comes through with the writing. This is my final writing issue with this episode. In this episode, they kind of introduce the idea that this Mirror Iris is more than human, and she's kind of she just wants to be alive. She doesn't feel alive. She just wants to be she wants to be a human, basically. And in this death scene where Barry is holding her, she says, "I feel alive," and then she gets killed off. This was odd to me because, again, like the brother-sister thing, they've never spoken about this. They've never introduced this idea. This whole thing of this mirror version of Iris wanting to be her own person and wanting to be more than just, a mirror clone, that's never been established. Up until this point, she's just been a subservient, sort of servant to Eva. So to kind of introduce this idea of, oh, she wants to be human, it made the death feel kind of flat to me, especially because this character isn't someone I've been particularly attached to, because obviously we know that we pretty much knew she was going to die at some point, because obviously why would she be kept alive? But in this death scene, they try and add some emotion by being like, oh, I just wanted to be human and now I feel alive. And I get that, and again, on a level it kind of works, but again, it just feels strange to me because this was never kind of set up beforehand. If we had seen this in the last couple of episodes, especially because Mirror Iris has been around for a while now, if they had set this up in the last 2 episodes where she was started to question it and started to question Eva and wanted to just sort of be her own person, perhaps was getting attached to Team Flash and attached to Barry, I would have bought it. But given the fact it just comes out in this episode out of nowhere and then she dies, I was a bit like, yeah, bit strange, a bit odd. And again, from a writing perspective, I just think it was a bit rushed. I think they should have done this a couple of episodes earlier and then built up to the death, but whatever. Again, it's not terrible. Again, all my writing issues that I've mentioned in this episode are very nitpicky stuff. It's nothing huge. It's just things I found a bit strange. And in this is my biggest one. It was just weird. I think they could have set this up a bit better. But this does eventually end with Eva escaping. She does get out of the mirror, and we do have this brief little altercation between her and Barry. But Eva's out now, so that's all cool. So Eva is now... Again, I don't know what Eva's going to do now, because obviously she's going after Carver, so we're going to see that play out now. And I don't know how much this is going to play out next episode, because the next episode is obviously we're going to see a lot with Pied Piper, and we're going to see Godspeed return, so we don't know what's going to go on with that. So Eva's now out of the mirror world. She's going to be exploring the world in the real world, and she's going to be going after Carver and Black Hole, so we'll see where that goes. But it's nice to have Eva finally out of the mirror dimension and to kind of have this mirror story wrapped up, even though Iris is actually still in there. So we're going to have to see where that goes. And that does talk about the post-credit scene as well. The post-credit scene, we do see Barry and Iris kind of talking to each other through the mirror. Now, I have to say, I've actually not seen this scene properly because the version of the episode I watched cut off, so I've actually not seen the actual post-credit scene properly, but I do know basically what it's about. So basically, all I know is that Iris is still in the mirror dimension, so unless she gets out in this, I don't know. She might actually get out. If she does, let me know in the comments, because I've not actually seen the full episode technically. But basically, from the screenshots I've seen, from people talking about it, Barry, it just talks to Iris through the mirror, so she's still in there, so something's going to have to happen with her still as well. Oh, and I completely forgot to mention, we had the story with Cisco and Ralph trying to help Caitlin. This was weird. This is basically just 2 scenes, and it feels completely out of place. It's just Cisco finds Caitlin, and she's kind of in this ice coma where she's kind of recovering from the battle with Sunshine a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, this is basically there just to give them something to do, and we didn't see Caitlin last week, and this is where she's been. She's just basically been recovering, and also it is interesting because obviously we do know Danielle Panabaker, she was pregnant when filming this, so she is under a blanket this entire episode, so you don't actually see her stomach. But yeah, again, it's a bit weird. It's just out of place. It's just there to kind of give them something to do. Overall, though, I thought this episode was great. Again, another fantastic episode for this back half of the season. While I do have some writing issues, as I said, it's mostly nitpicks. It's not anything huge. It's not going to disrupt the episode. I just found some things within it were strangely handled and strangely written and just kind of come out of nowhere in some cases. And again, the Iris death scene where she's proclaiming that she was proud to be alive and stuff like that just was a bit too quick for me. I found it a bit too much of a jump for me. But overall, really strong episode. Again, I think it was a great one for this back half of the season, continuing the trend. We've only got 2 more to go now, so let's hope that they can continue this momentum going forward for these last 2 episodes and really knock it out of the park, because this has truly been a fantastic season of The Flash, and it's really been up there with Season 1 and Season 2 for me, so I cannot wait to see where this goes. So overall, I'm going to give this episode... I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I've been giving a lot of episodes, 8s and 9s recently, and I do think this episode is a bit below that, so I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10. But what did you guys think about this episode? Make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Were you a fan of it, or were you not? Whatever you thought about it, let me know in the comments down below. And as always, guys, if you want to see more DC content and Flash content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads from me. And I hope to see you guys again in my next video.